ח' ולא צ'יקס הגדולה לקננה הוא מאחר שכל ימי הקריאה המפורטים במשנה נתקנו בוודאי על ידי אנשי הכנסת הגדולה. היא סכנת הכשרים.
Please bring me a cup.
מגילה שעד זמן העיקר תקנתה עד הזכינו אנשי הכנסת הגדולה חיבור החיים.
Yossi, you ready?
אנשי כנסת, I'm just doing חזרה until you're ready.
Is the camera set up so that we're all in the right place? We're good to go? Okay. Siyata Dishmaya. We're going to review quickly, Ariel and Lior and Yossi, the Mishnah. Each one of you are going to tell me the Mishnah like this.
We did already the Mishnah.
I know. We spent now 7 days on this Mishnah, with Yossi almost 10 days. And I explained to you guys earlier that the Mishnah is the key for the whole Gemara. If you understand the Mishnah cold, then you know it really well, you're going to go to this Gemara like a piece of cake. If you don't know the Mishnah well and the foundation is not built well, suddenly you're going to be stuck in the Gemara, and 3 pages from now you're going to be like, I don't understand why we're arguing on this concept. And it's ikad. Very important thing I didn't mention yesterday. Masechet Megillah is one of those things, one of those pieces that we learn that speaks to the heart. I explained this to Yossi. It's very interesting. It's one of the only Gemariyot connected to the holiday Purim, the only Gemara that's connected to a holiday Purim, and the only Megillah that has its own Masechet. Now, interestingly enough, we say the heart in Hebrew is liv. Liv. Liv is Gimatria, Lamed is 30, and Bet is 2, it's 32. So it's no coincidence that the Megillah has 32 pages, because it's one of those things that speaks to the heart of a person. We're going to see in the Masechet Megillah unbelievable Hiddushim and advice for life. Besides, it's going to give us actually the information of a Megillah. You're going to soon see as we start turning the pages, it's going to give us a lot more knowledge. And what's interesting is that the heart is divided in 4 different parts. Anyone who knows the heart, there's 2 parts on the top and 2 parts on the bottom. So 4. So it was no coincidence that when they established Masechet Megillah, how many perakim are there? There are 4 perakim in Masechet Megillah. So before we begin, you guys have to know some of the facts. 32 pages, 4 perakim. Okay. Now, we read this Mishnah yesterday, and we're going to review it quickly. Who is the author of this Mishnah? There was no name here. We read in Megillah, Nikret Bir Aleph, B'Yud Bet, B'Yud Gimel, B'Yud Al, Betet Vav. But there's no name of anybody here. Can someone tell me who wrote this Mishnah? Yossi, who wrote the Mishnah?
Rabbi Meir.
How do you know that?
Any Mishnah that doesn't mention the name is Rabbi Meir.
Hazak Baruch. Very good. Stam Mishnah Rabbi Meir. Who was Rabbi Meir? This was Rabbi Meir Ba'al Hanes. That was him. And who was his rabbi? Rabbi Akiva ben Yosef. Rabbi Akiva ben Yosef. Some interesting point on Rabbi Akiva. Halacha is not like Rabbi Akiva in almost anywhere in the Gemara. Most of the time it's not. There's only one case, I believe, Banim atem lahashem, Banim abadim, Banim kirim banim. But other than that, Halacha is generally not like Rabbi Meir. Why not? I want to hear an interesting fact on Rabbi Meir, you guys. Unbelievable fact. Rabbi Meir had another name. His name was Rabbi Nehorai. Okay? Why is Halacha not like him if he's so great? He was so great and so knowledgeable.
Oh, Rabbi Meir?
Rabbi Meir. He was able to convince every rabbi and anyone that both Tameh is Tahor and Tahor is Tameh so well that you yourself would believe him in both situations that it's 100% true. The Hachamim said he was so knowledgeable and he's able to clarify everything to its minute detail, to break it apart, that he would be able to convince you that something is Tameh is Tahor, or that the Mamzeh is Tahor, in such a minute way. The Hachamim said we can't put Halacha like him because he was so knowledgeable.
But he was a time that he was, I don't know if it's him or someone else, that he used to say something and everybody else saw something else, and they go by the Rabbim. But the really halacha is like Kemoto, because he knew better than them, but they didn't understand.
They didn't know how to refute his argument.
Yeah.
They could not argue with his point.
Shouldn't that be the
but they said Atid Lavo is going to be like him, because people understand it. I don't know, something like that.
Why did they not? Because you see, when it comes to learning, there's a lot. When it comes to halakha, it's different. But in a situation where, like Rabbi Meir was so knowledgeable, where he would be able to convince both parts, even to somebody extremely knowledgeable, it seems the Hachamim didn't want that to be the individual that gave over the halakha, the maaseh. The basic understanding that I when I read,
Rabim, no, like Rabim la'atot.
Yes, always it's Yachid Rabim halakha Rabim. But here in this case, Rabbi Meir was so knowledgeable that because he was able to convince so many people on both sides, the Hachamim didn't put halakha like him. It's an interesting fact. The only case I told you was Bani Matem LaHashem. There's an argument. Are we called Avadim or the children of Hashem? And it's one of the cases where we follow Rabbi Meir, Atem Kirim Banim. What does that mean? Is that no matter what a Jew does, no matter where he is, no matter what level he sinks to, even more than the 49th level of Tum'ah, you're still the children of the Borei Olam. God is never going to abandon us, no matter what. Just like a father has a son, no matter how much his son goes off, he always has that little piece in his heart that he wants his son back.
It's comforting that they all agreed on that, at least. And we follow Rabbi Meir on this. And you know, it says on Rabbi Meir, he's buried in Tveria, the Ma'amar. I remember seeing a source for it once, that he's buried standing up. And he's buried with his shoes on, and he's buried with a cane.
Wow.
And why? Because when Eliyahu Navi Zachor Latov is going to reveal himself, he's going to reveal himself in Tveria. Why do I say he's going to reveal himself in Tveria, one of the Ir Kedoshim? Because the Sanhedrin, when it was exiled from Yerushalayim, ended up going to 10 different cities. And when it reached the last city, it was on Tveria. An interesting point, the Hachamim always built the Sanhedrin next to a body of water, always, because it's brought down that learning next to a body of water both relaxes the mind and expands the mind. So they didn't, I assure you, they didn't build it near a beach, but they built it near a body of water. And by being near a body of water, expanded the mind. And today we know that. Today we know the actual effects of an individual, you know, versus looking at a site in New York City, you know, a bunch of buildings, or looking at an ocean. An ocean will definitely calm an individual down and will expand his mind. And the Hachamim knew that. So the Sanhedrin last stop was in Tveria. And I heard Rabbi Yosef Shani in Eretz Yisrael. He visited Brooklyn many years ago by my uncle's house, Jack Baghdadi. And when he was there, he informed us all different things about Yemot HaMashiach, and he sourced out unbelievable ma'amrot. He said that Eliyahu Navi Zachoto, what is he going to do? He's going to go to Tveria, and he's going to reset up the Sanhedrin. How is he going to do it? He's going to gather 70 rabbis from Am Yisrael that are currently existing. So I would assume, based on that, probably Sfaradim, Ashkenazim, Hasidim, Temanim, all the different, you're going to have Bukhari, and you're going to have all the different rabbis in the 70 Sanhedrin. And Eliyahu Navi Zachor Latov is going to appoint the Mashiach. And he's going to ask the Sanhedrin, do you agree that this individual should be the Mashiach? And they're going to have to vote. And when they vote as a yay, as opposed to a nay, they're going to anoint this individual as the Mashiach Sidkenu. And Eliyahu Navi Zachor Latov is going to permit him to do what he needs to do, whether it's gather Am Yisrael, teach Torah, Takanot, the Milchama, Gog uMagog, whatever it is that's in store. But it's going to take place in Tveria. And Rabbi Meir Baal Hanes is standing up with his shoes ready to break through the cement and the dirt that's covering his kever to be goel us. And if there's one thing that we know, is that time and time again, the Borei Olam has never abandoned us. You know, the importance of learning is ikar to the survival of the Jewish people. It's not Jewish culture. It's not the food you eat. It's not the language you speak. It's not if you speak Hebrew. I can assure you people have never spoken Hebrew and they've held on to the religion, while people have spoken Lashon HaKodesh in Hebrew and have lost the religion. they're Hilunim. So the only thing that keeps us together is the Limud Torah. Nothing else. And every generation who has tied themselves to the Gemara, to the Halacha, has survived. Whoever has not, they're just a speck in a book in Jewish history. And I love reading Jewish history. I love checking the facts, sourcing the facts, and questioning the sources. And I can assure you, I've never found a generation that abandoned the Torah and survived. Didn't exist. It took a couple of years, sometimes 40, 50 years, 60 years, and it's gone. And we see that even here in the United States. We see how those who abandoned the Torah only 50 years ago, or right after the Holocaust, there were two different paths. Stick with the learning, or stick with Jewish culture and drop the learning. Whoever stuck with the Jewish culture and dropped the learning, unfortunately became more liberal and changed, while those who have stuck with the learning came the Ikai. So let's go back to our Mishnah. I want to quickly review. We'll start with Lior, then Ariel, and then Yossi. This Mishnah needs to be solid. I have the chart up. Let's begin quickly. You have to read it. You have 2 minutes. I want you to read the entire thing, and I want you to say it in English. Go right ahead.
במגילאה נקראת בי"א, בי"ב, בי"ג, בי"ד, בט"ו, לא פחות ולא יותר. קרקין המוקין חומה, ממות יהושע בן נון, קוראים בט"ו, כפרים ועריות גדולות, קוראים בי"ד, אלא שהכפרים מקדימים ליום הכניסה. כפרים ועריות גדולות קוראים...
אלא, כיצד?
כיצד חל להיות י"ד בשני, כפרים ועריות גדולות קוראים ביום...
Okay, so let's go. We'll start from the first case. Megillah Nikret Yud Aleph, Yud Bet, Yud Gimel, Yud Dalet, Tetvav. You read it on 5 different days. Before I continue, you guys already know, without me having to teach you this Mishnah, that you read it on 2 days. Why? Because you know that Purim falls out on Yud Dalet and Tetvav is Shushan Purim. You knew that already. So the Mishnah is just telling us a couple of extra days. We don't know where they got this 11, 12, and 13. But before we continue, use your own mind. You already know 2 of them is good. I don't know where they got the other 3 yet. Lo pachot lo yoter. Not 10, not 16. Kirakin. Hamukafin choma. Right away, Kirakin. What is Kirakin? If you look at Unkelus in the Targum, it's the Targum of the word Mivsarim. Mivsarim. Where is Mivsarim? Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Meraglim in Parashat Shlach, I want you to check, are there cities that are walled? It tells them, are they unwalled? Are they walled? Go scout that land. So if you look at Unkelus, it's Mivsarim, walled city, Kerakim. Now Tosafot brings down a little bit later that in this Gemara, Kerakim means a walled city. But if you look in other Gemariyot and you see the word Kerakim, what does it mean, Yossi? It just means a big city. Big city. Only it seems in this Gemara.
It says in this parasha.
In this parasha, that we'll see. So Kerakim hamukafin choma, miyamot Yehoshua ben Nun. Walled cities from Yehoshua ben Nun. They read on Tetvav. A little side note: why doesn't it say walled cities from the time of Shushan? What does Yehoshua ben Nun have to do with Purim? Any guesses, guys? First one. Yehoshua ben Nun was the general of one of the first armies that fought Amalek. And here the whole story of Purim is the story of Amalek. So we say that from the first one who battled Amalek, even though it was Moshe and Yehoshua, he was the general. From the first one who battled Amalek, we're going to make the city that they read on Shushan on the 15th. Now I said another thing, another important thing that I brought up to you guys that was brought down. That what does Yehoshua ben Nun have to do again with this? Why don't you just tell me from Yemot Shushan Habirah? Because when did the whole story of Megillat Esther happen? We had the Binyan Bayit Rishon. After Chorban Bayit Rishon, they went to Bavel. They were in exile. They were in exile for a little over 70 years. Now Achashverosh, he miscounted, and because he miscounted, he made a party. He started taking the stuff from the Kohen Gadol, wearing all the garments, and the Jews came to the party. And so and so, and he was off on his number, which
Once again, this is the time that he invited everybody.
Yes, when he made the party, the 100 when the 180 day party. Why was he celebrating? He was celebrating 2 things. First, he won a battle with the Greeks. Once he destroyed the Greeks, and the Persians and the Babylonians, these guys fought each other left and right.
This is when he
counted
the 70 years.
Huh?
This is where he counted the 70?
He counted the 70. Now, he had miscounted the 70 because I explained to you that when was the 70 started? Was it from the Galut or Yehoiachin, when Mordechai went out because the way that the Galut originally happened is that they didn't actually go exile the Jewish people. You see, the enemies of the Jewish people that understand the foundation of how the Jewish people was established, they went after the rabbis first. So what did he do? When Sanherib and they went after the Yehudim and Bnei Israel during Churban Bayit Rishon, a few years before he destroyed, he took out all the rabbis. He took out Mordechai Yehudi, he took out all the Talmidei Chachamim, Rashi Yeshivot, and he pulled them all out, took them to Bavel. By doing that, now Am Yisrael had no guide. They had no sages that can tell them, hey, what do we do here? Do we stay? Do we go? What's halakha? So he weakened them from their foundational knowledge, from their advice, the advice of the Hachamim. By doing that, after he did that, he was able to penetrate and destroy the Beit HaMikdash much quicker. And he went in. Now, the Borei Olam had mercy on us. Why do you have mercy on us? Because he did that when they took the Hachamim to Bavel. What do you think the Hachamim did in Bavel? You think they went and they played golf in Bavel? Has v'shalom. They went in there. They said up, okay, listen, we're here now. We're going to set up yeshivot. They set up all the infrastructure of the yeshivot, which later became Sura, Pumbedita, which is Baghdad. They say, and they set up all the yeshivot. Now, a few years later, when Bnei Israel went to Galut, they got there. The shuls were already set up. The Batei Midrash were set up. Where do we put yeshiva? We had the yeshiva set up. I'm sure there was an influx and they had to raise tuition in order to get everyone in. But Baruch Hashem, the Borei Olam, Hekdim Refu'ah Lamaka. He gave us the Refu'ah before, and Baruch Hashem, we were able to live. And
they had where
to run.
Yeah.
Of course, they had where to run. Don't think it's coincidence that today we have Eretz Israel. After World War II, prior to the establishment of Israel, people didn't know where to go. Why are we so comfortable in Galut in America today? Because we know we have Eretz Israel. In the back of everyone's mind, your mind, and your mind is,
something happened, I'm running there.
Everyone's running to Israel. I don't care I don't see anyone running back to Hungary, Romania, Eastern Europe, or any of the Middle Eastern countries. I think only a fool would think that. And we're not. And I actually questioned, I spoke with one of the Gedolim. I told them maybe China is the next Galut, because if you look at Jewish history, we had never really been in China.
Asia Minor,
and the Jewish people, now the Jewish people never fully established exile there. So I said to them, it could just be, based on what we see happening in the world, that China is the next superpower. Maybe the Borei Olam is going to set us up to go to China, just like we have always. By the way, the Jewish people have always been in countries that were the superpowers. Mm-hmm. Whenever the Jews have left those countries, the countries generally collapsed. Nothing to do with the Jewish people. It's that our culture is generally one where we improved the cities and the communities that we were in. Mm-hmm. It's just a basic understanding. When Jewish people come into a town,
some Jewish
they want to develop. There are some Jews, and I'll tell you what the Gadol told me at the end. And us, we come in, we like to build houses of worship, we like to build our own schools, we like to build our own Hesed organizations and charities and Hatzalah and Chaverim and Shomrim, and we set up infrastructure. That infrastructure is done from our heart and our soul. We are not compensated from anyone to do such a thing. And so I always said maybe China was the next. And he explained to me that it's not the case. That it's brought down from the son of the yeshiva of Voloshin, Rav Chaim Voloshin, that I think his name was Rav David Voloshin, that he had a stroke of Ruach HaKodesh during one of the tefillot that he did, and he had told the students that after they had revealed to him in some capacity that America is going to be the last stop of the Galut. There will not be another country after America, and it's very assuring. It's very assuring because it's telling us that the time is up, and that all we need to do now is just focus on learning Torah and doing mitzvot. You don't have to do anything. Don't worry about having to go into it. And he mentioned to me that why are we not going to go to China? He says because when Yeshivat Mir was exiled and they ended up going through Russia, Siberia, they ended up in Shanghai. And when they ended up in Shanghai, they studied in one of the yeshivot there in Shanghai that was built, the shul that was built. And he said the Yeshivat Mir had focused so much in their learning. That few years that they were there, Rav Shach was one of the rabbis there and many others.
In Shanghai?
In Shanghai, they pulled out all the sparks that was left in China. Goes to show you how one yeshiva was able to pull out of over 1 billion people living there. This one yeshiva at Mir sucked out every piece of kedusha that was left. They left almost nothing. So the Gadol said, there's not going to be any galut there because Yeshivat Mir cleaned out every spark of kedusha that was left. There's only little tidbits, and I'm sure Chabad, they will clean them up very easily for us, as they always do in the most random places around the world.
America is too much.
And so as we go back now to Yehoshua ben Nun and Shushan, what does it have to do? Because during the Chorban and during Shushan Habira, when Purim happened, what was happening in Yerushalayim and Eretz Israel? It was all destroyed. It was after the Chorban. Ezra HaSofer and Nehemiah did not come back yet to rebuild Israel and the Beit HaMikdash. The place was all destroyed. So what would have happened if the Hachamim said you could read on the 15th like Shushan, but only from walled cities from the time of Shushan? You know what would have ended up happening? There would be no walled cities in Israel that you would have read on the 15th. And it would have been a bizayon that people would read in Shushan, which is today they say Hamadan in Iran. They would read it there.
And don't read it.
And then Yerushalayim, they're going to read it on the 14th. What a bizayon. So the Hachamim said, no, we're going to backtrack it to the time of Yehoshua ben Nun.
But we had a question about...
Now, what was our question? This was a question me and Yossi went in. I said, how do we know that from the time of Yehoshua ben Nun, these cities had walls anyway? Who said, we know Yericho had a wall. How do I know Yericho had a wall? Because when Yehoshua ben Nun went in, he had to go around. So Yericho, but it seems, I don't know. Did Yerushalayim have a full wall from the time of Yehoshua ben Nun? I'm not sure. I have to check up some of the details. We asked, did all the cities that we know that are walled, that we assume are walled, were they really walled from Yehoshua ben Nun? I'm not sure. We know Yericho was for sure, but I don't know about all the other ones. So it's interesting. And then I'm going to further research that question as we continue.
They cover later, no? Let's say if it's walled by a body of water or...
We're going to get to it. We're going to go into all the details. So now you understand, why was it Yehoshua ben Nun the time of him? Because we don't want to make bizayon on all the cities in Israel. We're going to tell them, so what would have happened? There would be actually nowhere that would read on Tetvav, because Yerushalayim would have been destroyed. You would only read it in Galut. And so the Chachamim didn't do it.
And Yehoshua ben Nun nothing to do with Shevet Binyamin, right?
No, he's from Shevet Ephraim. He's from Shevet Ephraim. And, but I told you, in regards to Amalek, he was one of the first generals to fight Amalek. Okay, so, it tells us here, there's 3 different cities. You have a walled city, you have a big city, and then you have the villagers, the Kafrim. The Kefarim or Kafrim, they call them. Okay? And they read it on the Yom HaKnisa. Yom HaKnisa, we said, is Yom Sheni, Yom Hamishi, the 2 days of the week. How do we commemorate Yom HaKnisa today? What do we do on Yom HaKnisa? We read Tahanun today. We do Tahanun today, we read the Torah. Why do we take the Torah out on Sheni and Hamishi? What did I tell you guys?
So there's no there's no gap.
Of how many days? How many days?
3 days.
Perfect. Who made that takana? Ezra HaSofer. And we're gonna bump into it today when we bump into the Anshe Knesset Gedollah, which is today's class. I brought you a bunch of sources to talk about who were the Anshe Knesset Gedollah. We're gonna spend the time today to understand it. I told you guys, we're gonna spend probably a good 2 weeks on just this front 1 page. Our goal is not to finish. Our goal is to understand the depth of the Gemara word by word and understand concept by concept. If we see a concept in this Gemara or Mishnah that we don't understand, I will spend the week with you delving into it. We went into Anshe Knesset Gedollah. I asked you guys some details, and not everyone knew all the facts, so we're going to go and review that today after we finish the Mishnah. Okay. How so? So we're going to come up with 6 cases. All right. I want Ariel to read it, and I'm going to point it out to you. Chal means whenever it says Chal, it goes from the Yud Dalet. How do I know Chal is not from Yud Aleph? Because the Megillah tells us only Yud Dalet. So whenever we say Chal, we're going to go from the original day. Chal lihiyot Yud Dalet.
בשני. כפרים ועירות גדולות קוראים בו ביום.
So what happens? The Kefarim, the villages, and Ayot Gedolot, they read on the Yud Dalet. Okay?
So this one comes out Yud Dalet.
It comes out Yud Dalet on Yom Knisa. Okay, good. And Shelishi? ומוקפות חומה למחר. The next day is Yom Shelishi, is מוקפות חומה. Okay, good. חל להיות בשלישי
או ברביעי כפרים
ועיירות.
מקדימים ליום הכניסה. ליום.
ליום הכניסה. Good. So he tells you if Yud Dalet fell out on a Shilishi, they backtrack one day to Yom HaKnisa for Kifarim. Now, okay, continue, and then we're gonna explain the reason.
ויריות גדולות.
עיירות גדולות, yeah.
עיירות גדולות קוראים בו ביום.
Bo bayom, that's on Yud Dalet. Yud Dalet, the Ayar Gedolot is the big cities, just like we do today. And the walled cities the next day. Okay, now 1 second. If you look at the Rashi over here, Rashi tells us why did they read Ela Shakafrim Makim Yom HaKnisa? Can you read the Rashi? Ela Shakafrim Makim Yom HaKnisa. Right there. Ela Shakafrim Makim Yom HaKnisa.
So what
is it? The Mishnah tells us that the villagers they backtrack to Yom HaKnisa, which we said is Sheni Hamishi. Why? What does Rashi tell us? Kilomar Chasha Mukafim.
בט"ו ויום מוקמים קוראים בי"ד זה הרי כלול כלל י"ח י"ג י"א י"ג י"ב י"ג אלא שהכפרים נתנו להן
That's okay, you're reading perfect. נתנו להם חכמים רשות להקדים קריאתה. The Chachamim gave them a little bit of a boost, a little bit of a permission that they have a couple extra days. Why? ליום הכניסה, יום שני בשבת שלפני י"ד או חמישי בשבת, אוקיי, שהוא יום כניסה, שהכפרים מתכנסים לעיירות למשפט. They used to go to the city for judgments. What do I mean? For the court cases, people, what do we do? Is it allowed? He owes me money. Do I pay him now? Do I pay him later? All the details. The fee, now what does it tell us? It tells me right away that the Batei Mishpat were not in the villages, they were in the cities. From Rashi, I can deduce from here that they weren't in there. Now look what Rashi tells us. The fee, שבתי דינין יושבים בעיירות בשני ובחמישי כתקנת עזרא. זה הסופר. Ezra Sofer. Who was Ezra? Ezra sat on the Anshe Knesset Hadidulah, which we're going to talk about today. This is one of the takanot that he did. Okay? So there's a couple of takanot he did. One of them is this one. V'akefarim enam bikim likrot. Rashi tells us, why is it? Because the villagers, they're not that knowledgeable. They're not that, they're in the village. What do they do in the village? They're farmers. They work laborish jobs. So they weren't so knowledgeable. You need to get one of the readers from the ear, from the city. It's like today, when you want to get a good Hazan, what do? You don't go to Wichita, Kansas. You go to Israel. Or you go to New York, you get one from New York. You're not going to, you go out to the places where, the big cities, that's where they practice, you have more people. And also, competition breeds a better product.
Yeah.
When you have one Hazan in the village, this guy thinks he's,
big shot.
He thinks he's a big shot. He gets up there, he's reading. Suddenly he goes to the city, he sees the regular 14-year-old Hazan, he's got a better voice than him. And not that, what I'm trying to tell you is that the competition breeds a better product when, and the Chachamim tell us, So in
Israel,
even
Chachamim, the rabbi here go to Yerushalayim,
you see it the most with the Shach and the Taz, how they wrote Sfarim, one opinion on the other, but when you read them and you learn them inside and you understand the history behind these Chachamim, it's unbelievable how they all, but this sharpened the minds of the people. You understand? And it's all done b'chavod, b'derech eretz, of course. But this is what it is. We're all trying to strive for something. The Buddha Olam gave everybody gifts, but those gifts come out through hard work. And this competition did it. Now, so they went to the big cities in order to get a reader. Why? Because they didn't know how to read. Okay. לבוא ביום י"ד, פעמים יום הכניס, לכל צריכים שכנראה להם אחד מבני העיר, ולא הצליחו חכמים להתאחר. And the rabbis didn't let them have to delay it, ולבוא ביום י"ד, to come on the 14th פעמים, שיום הכניסה בעיר ג' פעמים בעיר ב'. So what did Rashi tell us? Generally didn't have a good reader. Now we read Rabbeinu Hananel, which is on the side of the Gemara, and I want you to see what Rabbeinu Hananel said. Rabbeinu Hananel, if you look in there, I'm going to read it for you. It says here, מפני שנכנסים בני הכפרים. Look at on there, it's right there. It starts with the word מפני of the first word. See מפני? It's on the first line, מפני. You see מפני on the first? The first word? מפני? מפני שנכנסים בני כפרים בקרקים כדי שיתפללו בציבור ויקראו בספר תורה. He tells you another thing.
They're saying that there's no.
He says here there was no minyan and there's no Sefer Torah in the villages, or they didn't have maybe the best Sefer Torah or thing. So he tells you. So Rabbeinu Hananel tells us another reason that is because they didn't have a Sefer Torah and a minyan. Now, if we look, we're going to see in the Gemara. The Gemara is going to give us a third reason. So one, didn't have a reader. Number two, didn't have a Sefer Torah and a minyan. And then later on, we're going to find out that the Gemara tells us that they did it because the villagers, they planted and grew all the food and the crops, and they had to bring it to the city. So in order to bring the water from the wells, in order to bring all the quality food, they went in from the villages into the city, and that was the third reason. So,
but why Dafka on Monday and Thursday?
Because so why we said because those are the days that the courts were open. The courts were not opened every day; they're only opened on those days. So because there
it's not another reason. I mean,
because
of.
It's a pretty good day for business if you know that everyone's there. It's like a big shuk. You know?
It's a market day, meaning everyone knows everyone's coming to town today.
Yeah.
Meaning everyone went to town every day. Everyone's coming in. You want to buy stuff, sell stuff. You want to discuss matter halacha, money issues. You know, there was all situations. So that was the day they came in. Not everyone went into the city on the main days, and that's how.
Also, that Monday and Thursday are the days to do tachanun and all that.
Today we do it.
Oh, back then, no.
Back then, no. Why not? No, because there wasn't any tefillot already. The Anshe Knesset did not yet officiate it yet. It was, we're going to talk about that today on what they do, what the Anshe Knesset do.
But that's the day that they used to do Sefer Torah back then, right? Monday and Thursday.
No, because Takanat Ezra was not yet instituted. Maybe at this point. It was probably after it was Takanat Ezra, yeah. But before Takanat Ezra, they didn't read the Torah every 3 days. Ezra Sofer was...
so why we said that he used to go there, one of the reasons that to hear Sefer Torah.
Yeah,
but Monday and Thursday.
Oh, so it must have been after. It must have been after the Takanah of Ezra. At least the discussion is after the Takanah of Ezra. We know that by the time of Rabbeinu Hananel and all these writings, it was already done. Takanat Ezra was when? It was right before Bayit Sheni. That's when they put together on Sheikh and Esatei Gedolah. And we're going to talk about it today. That's when they put it together. Now, Ezra Sofer, as a side note, if any of us today were to go back in time to Bayit Rishon, we would be shocked because we would probably see a completely different religion and people than we know today. Now, you think I'm joking, but I'm not. Ezra Sofer, according to one of the opinions that we're going to learn in a couple of pages, he changed the entire Torah. Whether it was written from Ktav Ivri to Ktav Ashuri, he added letters, and he even said, if Moshe Rabbeinu would ask me why I changed the Torah, I would tell them I changed and I put letters on Lanu ul Banenu, Ad, and unbelievable. Ezra changed halachot, tefillah. I mean, you could have went back down to the time of the Beit HaMikdash and you would have seen and been like, what is this?
Not tefillah.
The tefillah was different. The way they answered different. The Torah looked differently. Everything was completely different. Ezra had to make major changes because he said, if I don't do this now, it might not last.
It's interesting that version of Torah stuck all these generations.
You know why? It shows you the greatness of Ezra HaSofer. You know, he's maybe not given as much credit. He's also known as Malachi. If you look in the Sefer Malachi, in the Targum, the first pasuk.
Nobody really talk about him.
But you know what? I'll tell you who did talk about him. Those that were the Babylonians. See, my family is originally from Lebanon and Syria, but prior to that we were Iraqi. And in Iraq, what was the main name of the children? Ezra. Ezra. Why? Because he was such a shining figure in Bavel. Everyone called Ezra. Everyone called Ezra because, and this as a side note, in Yeshivat Porat Yosef, we had a rabbi. There was one time a lady, she couldn't have any children, and she went to the cave of Ezra HaSofer, and she prayed. I believe he's buried in Bavel. Bavel or Eretz Israel, Megillah. He's buried in Eretz Israel. And I was at his cave. I don't remember, but I was at his cave. And the lady went to the cave and she prayed. She said, I want to have a boy, a son that's going to learn and grow in the Torah and the mitzvot. And she did. And when the boy was born, she called him Ezra. And this little Ezra grew up to become the Rosh Yeshiva Porat Yosef Hacham Ezra Atiyeh. And it's no coincidence, just the Havdil, obviously. But Hacham Ezra Atiyeh was the foundation of all the Sephardi teachers and knowledge that we have till today.
He's teaching Rabbi Ovadia, no?
Cham Ovadia, he taught Cham Ben Sion Abba Shaul, he learned with Cham Salman Musafi, all the Cham Rabbi Yoda Sadka, all the big Gedolim that of the Sfaradim that set up our foundation was on the merit. I believe he died in the 70s, maybe. I'm not sure. I have to check it. But Cham Atiyeh, he set up for us, for the Sfaradim, a colossal work by instituting and teaching. And by doing so, today we are the Sfaradim that we know today because of him. And if Cham Atiyeh didn't do what he did, I don't know if the Sfaradim would be at their mark today like we are. He set us up, he produced teachers like Cham Ovadia Yosef and Baruch Hashem.
Created the whole Yalkut Yosef, which is what we
and not only Cham Ovadia Yosef produced children that are all also Gedolim. Cham Yitzhak Yosef, Cham David Yosef, hopefully the next chief rabbi Bezrat Hashem of Israel. We're very close to with Halacha Berura, and we converse with him. I always tell Cham David Yosef how lucky we are that Cham Ovadia Yosef had one son that speaks English. One. Because it's nice, I speak Hebrew, I can communicate with the other children. But to have one son that can come and speak English and communicate with the rest of the world in our natural tongue is a big zechut for us. And Baruch Hashem should give Cham David Yosef long life. Amen. Many times when we have questions of halakha, I speak with them. I call them once a week, once every 2 weeks to help advise on it. So let's continue on our Mishnah. Okay, we are on the third case. Chalihiyot.
חליות בשלישי,
בחמישי, חליות בחמישי.
חליות.
The last word on the line is חל.
חליות בחמישי, כפרים ועיריות גדולות, קוראים בו ביום. Okay, so if let's say חליות בחמישי, on י"ד לחמישי, כפרים ועיריות גדולות, קוראים בו ביום. Now just as a side note, guys, I just gave you guys 3 reasons why the kefarim should read early. If we tell them to all read on the Thursday, how do we solve any of these problems? They still have to go to the town. What about the food? What about having a reader? So I'm not exactly sure how that works when we do Kifrim on Bo Bayom, but it seems that we inconvenience the villagers in these cases, and we tell them, okay, it doesn't matter. You have to come in on that day and bring your food, and we're going to tie them. And I also mentioned to you that even though we let the Kefarim read the Megillah early, Yud Aleph, Yud Bet, Yud Gimel,
you can't do the other mitzvot. The
other mitzvot are not permitted to them to do early, which means on the day of Yud Daled, he's still going to do Mishloach Manot, Matnot Evanim, and Seudat Purim. That doesn't go away. It's only that they read the Megillah earlier. Mm-hmm. You got that, right, Ariel? Yeah. Yes. So the mitzvot don't get removed on Yudal. It's just that we allow them that courtesy of having that benefit when one of the 6 cases falls out. As another note, these cases of the calendar do not all exist anymore. Why not? Because Hillel HaKatan came and he ended up redoing our entire calendar. That was after these cases. So some of these cases actually could never fall out in this scenario.
Out of all the 6, it can never come out.
No, not all of them. Not all of them, but some of them can't. I didn't review all of them because some of the days can't fall out anymore. Like in the Shulchan Aruch, it tells after the calendar was established, we have Lo Adu Rosh, Lo Badu Pesach, things like that. What is Lo Adu Rosh? You ever hear of that?
No. You can't have certain this whole day on Shabbat.
Okay, so very good. What's Lo Adu Rosh? Lo means no. Adu Rosh. Rosh is Rosh Hashanah. Adu is Aleph Dalet Vav. Right? Aleph is the first day of the week, Dalet the 4th day, the 6th day. So Lo Adu Rosh means I know without having to think that the Rosh Hashanah is not falling out on an Aleph, a Dalet, and a day Vav. Lo Badu Pesach. Pesach is not going to fall out on the Bet, a Dalet, or Vav. I don't need to. And you continue. Shulchan Aruch gives the whole list of all of them. Once you know this stuff, it comes easy. People tell you, Pesach's falling out on Tuesday. You tell them no, it's not. Or Monday. You tell them no, it's not. It's not. It's not. Because you know, I checked out the calendar. Tell them no. I'm telling you for sure, it's not. Like sometimes people ask me, they're like how? Why are you so quick to tell people no? I'm like, because I always focus on the foundational stuff, and whenever I teach, I give you foundations. Yeah. That way, you have something in your pocket. That way, you're not sitting like an ha'aretz. You got the, no. Tell them what's a foundation. Look at the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch gives the basics on that. Once you know the basics, then you can start to understand and formulate answers before even looking at the sources. You kind of set them in. Okay? Now, it seems in this case that they ended up having to read Bo Bayom. Okay, continue. Umokafot choma למחר.
חל
להיות ערב שבת.
כ"דים מקדימים ליום
הכניסה. Okay, so חל להיות ערב שבת, let's say it falls out on ערב שבת. חל להיות ערב שבת, י"ד. Where it says כפרים מכניסים ליום הכניסה. They read it from one day before.
The day before.
יריות גדולות מוקפות חומה קוראים בו ביום.
They read on the day itself.
חל להיות בשבת.
Okay, that's the next case.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say Yud Dalet falls out on Shabbat. Okay.
Which was the case last year, right? Purim Mishulash.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, okay. That was what do we do? Kefarim vayot gedolot makdimim bikorim liyom haknisa. Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens? Everyone reads on Thursday.
Yeah.
Everyone reads on Thursday.
They go 2 days back?
2 days back.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody.
Because you're not reading on Shabbat.
You can't read on Shabbat.
On Friday.
Now, why can't you read on Shabbat? All right. Why can't we read on Shabbat?
Because it goes into
Why not?
Yom Rishon.
Why not? We have it after
No,
after Musaf. We finished praying Musaf. He pulls out a Megillah. He pulled out a scroll already from the Torah. We didn't have meaning. Why not read on Shabbat?
Same
now,
we didn't have a shofar this year.
meaning we read the Torah every week on Shabbat. Why not tell the guy, listen, after you read the scroll of the Torah, read the scroll of the Megillah. Why not?
I guess because you can't carry the
Yeah,
Megillah.
the Torah.
But I didn't carry the Torah. But Hachamim didn't want that. Take a look at Rashi.
Well, it's the same reason we didn't do a shofar this year.
They don't want to.
Yeah, the shofar. Yeah, shofar is
They don't
different.
wanna
Why is
mix.
shofar different? Give me why shofar is different.
Well,
Quick. Why is shofar
one
different?
Because it's in Tul and also.
No, give me a better one. Give me a strong, solid reason why shofar is different than Megillah. Give me a good one. Strong. Where does Megillah come from? Who instituted Megillah?
I guess.
Who? And who instituted Megillah? Who instituted this stuff? When is Megillah brought down in the Torah?
No.
Is shofar brought down in the Torah?
Yes.
There's your answer. Shofar is a deoraita. It's brought down in the Torah. This is the whole concept of the Megillah. It's all the Rabbanan.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand why the Rabbanan would weaken this. But the deoraita, shofar is a completely different thing. It's a deoraita. It's brought down in the Torah meforash that you have to do it.
Well, if it's stronger, so if you don't do the Doraita on Shabbat, lechatchila, then imagine the Megillah.
So, but the Megillah thing. So look at Rashi.
The shofar is one's completely muktzah. The other one is just a scroll that you could just read.
No, but a shofar, you could have blown it on Shabbat. You could have brought it before Shabbat. It just for that one chance of that one Jew that might break Shabbat, you don't want to do it.
But no one's breaking Shabbat on Megillah.
You could.
So look at Rashi. Let's look at Rashi. Chal arba'a asar lehiyot be'erev Shabbat. Ayarot u'mukafot choma korim bo bayom. Right? It's on the side right there. Chal lehiyot. Chal lehiyot. Right there. Now here, you want to read it, Ariel? She'en
kriyat Megillah
b'Shabbat. Very simple. You don't read on Shabbat. That's Rashi tells us right. Gezerah.
Gezerah
Shema
yitlana
beyado. That maybe you're going to end up carrying with your house. Ve'im tomar yom ya'acharu hamukafim ad achar Shabbat havalet etzayin v'amakra v'lo yavor. Okay, so he says here, why didn't you just do this? If you look here, why didn't he push off the case?
The Sunday.
Yeah. And push it up. He says why? Because you cannot go after the Tet Zayin.
Oh, it's true, because if you push it back to your Tet Vav, you'd go one above.
And then you go to Tet Zayin, and you can't. You cannot read, you can only read 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, not 10, and not 16, no matter what.
Yeah.
That was the Mishnah, was giving us that basis. So in any situation where it would go to the 16, it would be no good.
Yeah.
So if we go back here, let's read it. Chal liyot b'Shabbat, kefarim vayot gedalut korim makdimim v'korim liyom ha'knisa. So the villages and the big cities, they read on the Knesset of Thursday. Mukafot Choma le'machar. And the Mukafot Choma, they read on the Sunday. Chal liyot achar Shabbat. Let's say the case fell out that on Yom Rishon was the Yud Dalet, that's the last case. Kefarim matim le'yom ha'knisa. They go back, the Kefarim, to Yud Aleph. That's the only case that they would read on 11. Vayot gedalut korim bo bayom. They read on the day of achar Shabbat.
Mukafot
Choma lemachar, and they read, and the Mukafot Choma will read on Yom Sheni over here. These are the 6 cases that we have.
Why not read here and just continue to the next Yom Rishon?
No,
No, this is Yom Rishon.
That's Yom Rishon.
I wrote Yom Rishon twice because I wanted you to see it.
After that Yom Rishon, you go what we said, you go to Tet Zayin.
So you go, that by doing this, Ayarot Gedolot will read on the Yudalit, which we always want to do. We want to try to do that. And Tet Vav will be the Mukafot Choma. And then we just allow the Kefarim to go back to that day. So these are all the 6 cases of the Mishnah, very clearly brought down. And then I reminded you yesterday some of the secrets. One, that in the Megillah, why is there only 5 days that we read? Because you said the word Purim. Yeah. Purim spelled out Pei Vav Resh Yud Mem is found 5 times in the Megillah. So we learn from there 5 days. And then we said another thing from the Gaon Mevilna, that if you look in the entire Megillah, that there are 7 names of God, and that can be written but not erased. And if you look in the Megillah, there's none of those names. But whenever we make a beracha, we say Baruch Ata Amonai. But when we're looking, we see Yud Kei Vav Kei. So we say Aleph, Daled, Nun, and Yud, but we look at Kei Vav Kei. So the Gaon Mevilna says that that's actually in the Megillah. In the Megillah, we didn't see the hand of God. He was there and he was controlling it, but his name is not there. And the situation while it was happening, it was concerning, and they didn't see the hand of God, even though they know he was there and he's merciful. But that's why if you count 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15, we said, what does that equal? These are 65. 65, and 65 is the numerical value of Aleph, Daled, Nun, and Yud. Because that's Din, that's the name of the God of judgments. That's the name in the world today. We see more of the Din than anything else. But when we say Aleph, Daled, Nun, and Yud, we're looking at Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is Rahamim. Because in truth, everything is in and of itself Hesed and Rahamim, even though we don't understand it. And that's why it says Lo Pahot Lo Yoter. Because what's Pahot from Yud Aleph? It's 10. What's Yoter? 16. And if you add 10 and 16 is 26. The Gaon Vilna says if you add the days, you get the 65. The Pahot and Yoter is Yud Kei Vav Kei. And these are the Shemot of Hashem that are hidden in one of the Remazim in there. Okay? Now, let's continue to the Gemara. Megillah Nikret Beyud Aleph. You can start reading, Lior.
Megillah Nikret Beyud Menalan.
Okay, very good question. The Gemara starts and asks a simple question. Where did you get 11?
Is this still a Bimain?
No. Now it's the Gemara. Remember, I told you how the Gemara is set up.
So how do we know who wrote the Gemara now?
We don't know who asked this question. We're just going to say that the Gemara is asking a question. Now, I remember I told you is that the way the Gemara was written, these are statements that were given over hundreds of years, and it was compiled at the end by Ravina and Masechet. And I told you have to look at the Gemara from a bird's eye view. You're not looking at it always to try to understand. He said this, that. You have to understand that this was written after everything was already said and established, and from the bird's eye view, you're looking at the Gemara. When you look at it this way, you're looking at it from the form of more like a stenographer in a courtroom that had written everything. He said this, he said that. And so you're going to have to use your mind to fully understand the picture and connect the dots. So it asks a very simple question. How did you know 11? Okay? Mishnah, how did you know that? I know already 14 and 15 from the Megillah. Very simple. I don't need any explanation on that. Minalan. Okay, so let's explain. Minal, how do we know? Rather, we intend to state it as follows. Why? It says that the rabbis were lenient to the villagers to come on one of the days of Kenisa, Sheni Hamishi. Why? Okay, what was the reason that the Gemara is telling us here?
Provide
water and food. Now, that wasn't
on the villagers to bring all that?
That's where the food and water were come from. Usually, I guess the spring water, the mineral water was from the villages. I guess that's where the springs were. They weren't in the cities. That's where all the crops and the food. You know, a guy wanted a steak. The farm is usually not in the city. It's usually in the outskirts of the city. So, a very basic reason to get them the food on time. Okay. Anan hakikam ninan. Okay, the Gemara wants to explain further this statement. Mikedi, let us evaluate and see. Kullehu anshe knesset hagedolah takninhu. This is all these dates that we got here, they were all from the takana of the anshe knesset hagedolah. Okay? Now, we're going to go into that to understand who were the anshe knesset hagedolah, what they do, because, you know, I thought it was funny that that I saw when people mention statements on Sheikh Kollel, and they just accepted it and they continued learning. Who were these people? You're about to tell me a blockbuster that came a group of individuals and rechanged everything. Who are these people?
You're not going to question.
What would they do?
Yeah.
How'd they do it? And all the details, we're going to read a little bit about it today. Okay? The Isal Kadatach. The Isal Kadatach means if you're going to think, Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, Yudal Betet Vav Tikun, that if you're going to say, if you can think that they established only the Yudal and Tetvav, how could the rabbis come later and change the dates? What does that mean? They're saying that we don't know what Anshe Knesset Gedolah is, but they're saying these individuals came and they said Yudal Tetvav. How did you add Yud Aleph Yud Bet Yud Gimel? You can't tell me that came another group of rabbis at a later date. Why? Because we have a problem if another group of rabbis came and changed on Anshe Knesset Gedolah. Why? Because we have a Mishnah, V'hatenan. Every time you see the word V'hatenan, it means the Mishnah is coming up. And Beit Din Yachol Levatel Divrei Beit Din Havero. One Beit Din cannot annul another Beit Din. Ela imken gadol menu bechokma uvminyan. Only if they are greater in both knowledge and in number. Both. Number today we can probably get.
Yeah.
Knowledge probably not. We're not going to nowhere near Anshe Knesset Gedolah. Why not? We're going to explain it, but why can't the Anshe Knesset Gedolah be ever overthrown with another Beit Din? See, if we didn't know what Anshe Knesset Gedolah and who was sitting on it, we're going to find out. Now you'll see. Ela Heshita kullehu Anshe Knesset Gedolah takinhu. Okay, and so the Gemara says over here that it seems that from this that we have to assume that all the dates, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15, was an establishment from the time of Masechet and Gedolah. What does that mean? It means that the same individuals that made the takanah to read on 14 and 15 put a little asterisk star, and by the way, if you're living in the villages, it's 11, 12, and 13. The same people. It was the same group. So before we continue, I think we're going to stop the Gemara here, but go now into who were Anshe Knesset HaGedolah. I printed out a few things to read, and we're going to talk about it on who these people were. First, the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah. In English, they call this the Men of the Great Assembly. It was founded by Ezra HaSofer. Ezra HaSofer in the year 520. Ezra, before the Common Era, he put this together. Now, one of the reasons Ezra did this was not only to save Am Yisrael, but also because he was about to do a monumental thing. He was about to collect all the Jewish people from all the nations and bring them to Israel. Now, whenever you're about to do something of this type of work, you need to have the Hachamim on your side. Even if you are a Navi like Ezra, you need to have the collective group of the Hachamim supporting you.
Of course.
It's very important. So he put together a group of Hachamim in order to put these things together. On there sat Nevi'im. We had Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. Malachi is Ezra. We had Mordechai. Mordechai was one of...
Sure that the Ammonite didn't want to go with him?
We're gonna get to that right now. The Mordechai sat on this Anshe Knesset Gedolah. Mordechai also sat on the Sanhedrin. Now, what's interesting is that the Gemara tells us that in the Sanhedrin, in order to have an established Sanhedrin, you need to have people that speak 70 languages. Why 70 languages? Because if somebody comes with a testimony, and it's a testimony that might kill somebody with their testimony, we don't allow translators. A translator is not permitted. Why? Because whenever there's a translation, there is a loss of the actual definition of it. That's why a person who really truly wants to expand his learning could never do it in English. It will never happen. That's why the most advanced learning is happening in Israel. Torah. Why? Because you could fool anybody with the translation. I've read. I was one time in a vehicle in the Bahamas. I went on a trip with some of the yeshiva boys. They wanted to go on a one-day trip. We took them on a short trip at the end of the year to go to the Bahamas. And we were in the car, and they saw all of us wearing kippot, and the driver was a black man, and he said to me, "Are you guys Jewish?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "How come you have in your Bible?" He asked me this question, something derogatory statement. He said, I told him, our Bible doesn't say that. The Old Testament doesn't say that. I said, maybe the King James Bible, the one that was changed, I said to him, but the Old Testament does. He goes, no, I have the Old Testament. I said, you have it in English? He said, yes. I said, let me see. He showed me the pasuk and the perek. I look at it, I said, I know that perek and pasuk by heart. That's not in the Torah. I pulled out my phone, I pulled up Safaria, and I showed him how in his translated Bible, it was a complete different translation on the pasuk, and he had learned from this a derogatory thing on us, the Jewish people. And I showed him the correct, and I'm like, it doesn't even say that. I'm like, and I showed him in Hebrew, and I translated some of it, and I said to him, that's actually not true. That entire English translation is not actually the translation of the Hebrew. He was shocked. He was shocked. You have to know that
Jewish?
No, it was an English translation of one of the.
It was a type like Hebrew and English.
It was a Christian.
No,
so that's why when it comes to learning, you have to always, of course, know the English and the Hebrew, but you got to go back to the source. Always go back to the source, because a lot of statements of the Hachamim, when they are translated into English, they change the nuance. Like, I'll give you a good one. En ben David ba ad shetichle peruta min hakis. It says that the son of David is not going to come until there's no more money in pockets. So a lot of people said, oh, it means that when the Mashiach's come, everyone's going to be...
We don't have money.
Everyone's going to be bankrupt. Everyone's going to be bankrupt and have no money. And I remember hearing this from one of the statements of the rabbis in Brooklyn. And I went up there after and I told him, why did you just say that? He said, that's what it said. I said to him, you must have read it in English. I said to him, but I'm going to explain this to you in a basic Hebrew translation. I'm like, that's absolutely what it does. It does not mean that. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to go bankrupt on the Mashiach. What kind of excitement is that? Okay, guys. Guys, no one's going to have any money. Maybe money won't have its value.
Maybe it's one pirush.
Maybe it won't have its value like it has today. I said to him, but that's not what it means. And I told him, I'll show you what it means.
Credit card, you don't need money.
I told him exactly. I told him, En ben David ba. David HaMelech is the son of David is not coming until shetichle peruta min hakis, until coins are not found in people's pockets. We today have reached a point where we no longer carry coins. 50 years ago, coins were the currency. Prior to that, the coins actually had value. There were maybe gold, silver, copper, or some metal, palladium, platinum, or something. Today, the coins have no value in and of itself. The fiat currency is just a piece of paper with a form of trust. And we have reached
this
it.
Is not going to have soon.
And ben David ba ad shetichle peruta min hakis, we already have reached that point.
No,
so we reached the point.
You all do with the phone.
And that would be. So this is why the translations.
They want to put chip in people's body.
This is why the translations have to be very carefully scrutinized. You know, you should know a lot of Sfarim were not written in Hebrew. So, some books of Harambam, like Moreh Nevuchim, was not written in Hebrew. What was another sefer? I think that Ramchal.
They didn't make it. They make a perush.
They made a perush, but that's a translation. There were many of the Hachamim. I think even the Ramchal and a few others. They.
What he wrote, Rambam. What he wrote? What language?
Rambam wrote in Arabic. Arabic. Yeah. They many of them wrote in Arabic, and there were translations. They were translated later on by other Hachamim. Now, when they translated,
it's always a little bit different.
It's always a little different. I don't know anyone who learns any of the Harambam's books in Arabic, but it'd be kind of interesting to learn it in the original language. Okay, so Ezra HaSofer puts together this Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, and when he puts it together, he goes around to collect the Jewish people. Unfortunately, out of the millions of Jews that exist in the world at the time, he only gathers 50,000 Jews to go to Israel. And out of the 50,000, most of them were poor people.
From where?
Who are the people that left? They went from Bavel, from different. He did go to Yemen, and the story goes down like this: that when he went to Yemen, he wasn't able to convince even one Yemenite to come. Meaning, he, and I'm sorry, Yossi, to.
We're good here.
I'm sorry, but Yossi, you know what? I'm gonna tell you something. I'm gonna give you a positive on this. I'm gonna show you a positive. The Yemenites, they were not no foolish people. They were very holy people. They were Kodashim, Kodashim. They were Elyon, these people. But they also knew, they told Ezra, are you the Mashiach? Is this the final Geula? And when they questioned back and forth, they assumed that this was not the final Geulah. This was not going to be the final redemption. And they said, okay, if it's not final redemption, come back when you're ready. He didn't like that. And supposedly he had given them a form of tochacha, or I don't know.
Say curse.
I don't know if you want to say a curse, because I would never believe that his Asofit would curse another Jew. I don't care who says it. I'll tell you why. It's a pasuk in the Torah. So what it means is that if you curse another Jew, that curse bounces back.
It's also hard to believe that the head, and then because they're not the one who built Bet HaMikdash. It's so hard to.
I can assume he gave them a tochacha, and one of the tochachot he gave them was that they were never going to be financially rich or successful. That's what he had given them.
I heard together, that's why so many Yemenite Jews.
Okay, it could be. We can look it up and find that source. But the maskana, they didn't come along. That's all we do know. And the maskana, the Yemenites in Yemen were very poor. So that we know as a fact. They were very, very poor in Yemen. It's interesting. You know what their business in Yemen was? They used to do a lot of gold. They were goldsmiths. Sorfim. And it's funny. They were goldsmiths, but they were poor. They were poor. You know, I had a friend of mine, Rav Moshe Harir, who today lives in Be'er-Sheva in Israel, big Sadiq. He used to come to my father's house for years and years and years, more than 20 years, maybe 30 years. He would come to my father's house, and I met him when I was a little kid. And his job was, he would go to Yemen and bring the Yemenite Jews out. Mm-hmm. And he brought us Sifrei Torah from Yemen, Tefillin. He would go in there, he'd bring Jews out. They one time put him in jail. They were going to kill him in Yemen. And he got very sick. He got diabetes from it. He got out. He's stuck with him, that diabetes, till today. But Baruch Hashem, he was zocheh to bring out, I would say, hundreds, if not thousands, of the Jews. He probably finished taking out all the rest of the Jews. There were some rabbis that were in prison. He had got them out. It was a big, big mitzvah. And then when he got them to Israel, he set them up in Israel. He put them in yeshivot. He gave them homes. You know, Yemen, coming from Yemen to Israel, they had a very hard time settling down. So he kind of advised them. You know, these are devarim sheburumo shel olam ubnei adam mezalzelim b'hem. You know, a lot of times this type of stuff doesn't get a TV spot. And I can tell you, Moshe Harir, I know him today, he doesn't get not well recognized by much, and not looking for it in any way. But I can tell you, he literally saved families of people they smuggled out of Yemen, where they told them they were going to kill them. What's interesting about Yemen, most interesting about the Jews of Yemen, is that the Jews of Yemen were there before the Arabs were. Mm-hmm. It's even the Arabs themselves, who know their history well, know that the Yemenite Jews were in the country before they arrived. Before the year 600, 700, the Jews were there for maybe 1,000 years before.
So who was there?
There. I don't know who was there before, but there were other peoples there. And later on, as Islam grew, and it took over different territories, they came in there. But the Jews were there prior to that. They came from already Zman Harban Ba'et Rishon. They had already come almost 1,000 years before. Okay, so Ezra Sofer ends up including in the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah 120 members. Mordechai is one of them. You have Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. Okay, what did the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah do? They actually formed the Tanakh. The Tanakh that we have today, the 24 books, was formed by them. I'm going to give you a very, very important thing. They closed the Tanakh. Why is this important? Because which book got in? Megillat Esther. We're learning Megillat Esther and the Gemara. What book did not get in? The story of the Maccabim. Hanukkah. We have Megillat Antiochus and we have the Sefer HaMaccabim. 2 books. Neither one of them got into the Tanakh. Happens to be, where Sefer HaMaccabim did go? It went to the New Testament. The Christians have it in their form of their Tanakh. Goes to show you, when the Hachamim didn't take something, the Tum'ah grabbed it. Now, there were a lot of reasons why the Hachamim didn't put it in. Already, the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah was closed, so they didn't put him. And that was one of them. What else did they do? They established the Shmoneh, the Amidah. Why is the Amidah important? Because the Amidah is one of those tefillot that if a person prays it, even if he doesn't understand a single word of the Amidah, he's guaranteed to get answered. The Amidah is one of those tefillot that has a power that even if you don't understand it, it gets answered. Not all tefillot are like that. That's why they say, Tov me'at be'kavana, me'arbe be'lo kavana. do a little bit with kavanah, as opposed to doing a lot without kavanah. What they mean is that if a person is going to sit at the Mitzvah, and he wants to knock out the whole book of Tehillim, he wants to finish the whole Tehillim, great. He reads the whole Tehillim, he had almost no feeling. He just read it in Hebrew, he doesn't understand Hebrew, he doesn't understand, and it works. It helps a person and it will help us. But tov me'at b'kavanah be'lo kavanah. Take one perek of Tehillim and swim right into it. Understand it. What was David HaMelech saying? What was he doing? What did Rashi say? What does the Radak say? What does Misudat David, Misudat Sion? What did the Mefarshim say? Go into one perek of Tehillim, meditate on that one perek, and get closer to David HaMelech. That's what the Hachamim wanted. You know, we said Tefillah is avodah shebalev. The Tefillah is the work of your heart. If you're not doing the work of your heart in Tefillah, you're not doing Tefillah, you're doing something else. You know, maybe you're doing a mitzvat anashim melumada. You're just repeating words and doing a process with no real thing. And God doesn't want that. You know, God wants to see your heart. You know, He really wants to see you. And, you know, your goal, you don't have to take over the world. I explained this to you guys yesterday, that God doesn't want you to take over the world, but He definitely wants you to try. He didn't say do it, but He said you got to try, and you better work on it hard. And that's the ikar. Let's continue. Okay. The Anshe Knesset HaGedolah also did another thing. They closed off prophecy. When prophecy was closed off from the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, it was established that it would never come back again until Zeman Yemot HaMashiach. Harambam brings down that in order for the Nevu'ah to come back, that we should have prophets, we need one thing first. We need the majority of the Jewish people in Israel. Once you have majority of Jewish people in Israel, you have a foundational part for prophecy to return. Now, there were Navi'im that prophesied outside of Israel. Yeshaya, Yehezkel, Yirmiyah, Ezra, Nehemiah. They all had prophecies outside. Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi is Ezra. They all had a prophecy outside of Israel. But in order for it to come back to us, and Rambam tells you have to have a majority of Israel. I think it was in the year, maybe 2013, 2014, less than 10 years ago, I remember seeing a report. I don't know how verified the report was. It was an article that Israel had reached over 50% of the Jewish people on planet Earth that had now moved into Israel, which was a big event in the eyes of the Borei Olam, that we now reached a point in history where we are now the majority. We're majority there and less out, where this never happened. And that's all these pieces are causing world events for what's probably going to come in a short time, before Eliyahu Navi Zechor Tov reveals himself, and before the Shechitat of the Satan. So that's a very interesting part. And they closed off the Nevu'ah. Anshe Knesset HaGedolah said that after we're done, no one can, if somebody walks and tells you he's a prophet, you can tell him he's a shoteh, he's crazy, or prophecy went to young children. Then you see later on in the Gemara, they always question young children on things. That's why, you have to pay attention sometimes to what kids say. Not that everything they say is true, a lot they say is not, but, it's worth it to listen sometimes. Okay, now also, what did the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah put together? They added something new. They added 7 mitzvot. Because we only have 613 mitzvot with Torah, but we actually do 620. What is one of them? Megillah. Megillah is one of them. Hadlakat Nerot, Hanukkah, Nitilat Yadayim, and there are a bunch of others that were added on there. What else did they do? Prior to them, they obviously put together the tefillot before anyone went on to pray. You get up in the morning, God, please help me with this. I need to do that at work today. Can you help me with that? Can you send my wife this? Thank you. I'll say shalom b'imroma, have a good day. Chamim said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. Now we're going to have to put 10 people together. You have to answer Kaddish. You have to Kedusha, Barichu, Birkat Kohanim, Sifrei Torah. That was not established before that. That's why I told you. You went back to buy to Rishon, you'd be like, what's it? What is it? You'd be like, this is nothing like, everyone would be walking barefoot in the Beit HaMikdash, no shoes on. It was a different, completely different situation. Okay. Another thing that Anshe Knesset HaGedolah did, a major thing, is that if you look at history, Jewish history, world history, that prior to Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, the timing of Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, which is It says here, he brings down 520 before the Common Era, or about 3448, give or take. He says that there was something in the world that today we don't really see so much, which is idol worship, avodah zarah. You know, all these little figurines used to worship. They used to worship trees, animals, stars, constellations, astrology, astronomy. They worshipped everything and anything other than God, which was weird. You know, you kind of think, well, why'd someone think a tree is God? We obviously do not understand this in any way. We have no understanding of this. They were not stupid. Don't think for a minute that these individuals that worshipped avodah zarah were stupid. They were people that built things that today, we're looking at what they built today, we're looking at their artifacts today, and we don't understand them. We don't understand how they built them, we don't understand why they built them, we don't understand anything about it. And I can assure you, I don't know anyone that built anything today that will be around in 1,000 years from now, or let alone 50 or 100 years from now. Maybe he builds a building. But these people built structures that are 1, 2, 3,000 years old.
Megaliths, yeah.
And they're still around. They sent their message is reverberating today. And I don't know, is our message going to be reverberating in 300, 400, 500 years from now, or at the end of time before the year 6000? I don't know. Goes to show you, don't underestimate these individuals on the Stone Age or did all these things. But Anshe Knesset Gedolah did, they prayed to remove the idol worship and avodah zarah from the world. And prior to them doing this, it was a major problem. In Bayit Rishon, it's brought down that everyone, not everyone, but many people used to go to Bayit Rishon and they had in their little pockets a little form of avodah zarah. And they would worship this avodah zarah. Now you think this figurine was just like a little toy, but it wasn't. If you look at Yonatan ben Uziel, he speaks in Parashat Balak, ben Sipor. He tells you over there something unbelievable. He actually gives you what the little figurines avodah zarah used to do and how they used to work. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, he says that the Sipor that Balak used to have, a little bird, was not a real bird. It was a bird made out of different metals, lead and gold and silver, all different types of metals. And he would put a little paper, he would take a scroll, and he would roll a little scroll and put it into the metal bird's mouth, and he would put a candle underneath the bird, and he would ignite the bird, and the bird would fly. It would be a metal bird that had a spirit in it through black magic and avodah zarah, and it would go send out and work. Now, you know, today we have technology, but this form of avodah zarah was like a technology, because he would send the bird out and he'd tell the bird, go find out for me where this is. The bird would come back and say, the people are over there. And they had this avodah zarah was very similar to what technology is today. The only thing is, what do we have today in our pocket? We don't have avodah zarah in our pocket, but we have a little phone, the same thing. And the phone, people, of course, it has kedusha, it has certain things, but it's filled with more tum'ah and anything. And if there was no phones in the world, there'd be more kedusha than there would be tum'ah. But the phone brought more tum'ah, and it brought more things that people in their life would never have seen. And I'm not just talking about the wrong things like arayot and looking at women and those bad things. I'm talking about worse. I'm talking about things that people should never even have to see. Today, everything is recorded. Guy goes through has v'shalom, not somebody, lo alenu. Someone goes goy, lo alenu, in an accident. The whole thing's on video. Now the guy watches the video 18 times. Now his mind is always racing and looking at that scene. Mm-hmm. For what? There's no purpose of this. Now I know, okay, he got it on camera, he saw it, we know what happened, we know the whole scene, we saw from beginning to end. But this destroys the mind. You know, I was around the technology before it came out, and I invested in all different technologies before it came out, early on in the late 90s. I can tell you today my opinion about the technology is completely different. When it first came out, I understood the value and I saw it and I appreciate it and I use it, and it's an important form of my parnasah that Hashem gives me and in a lot of things I do. But it's a double-edged sword and it's very, very dangerous. And the more that I understand the technology, the more that I tell people, this is the Yetzer Hara and this is the Satan of the today. And even though we're recording this class using that device that other people are going to learn from, I'm telling you, it's a Satan, it's a Yetzer Hara, and it's something that has to be used. Now, as a side note, a person cannot survive without the Yetzer Hara today, because the Yetzer Hara also gives them a drive to do things. And so everything has to be controlled. just like everything else. You know, remember we said yesterday, Kadesh atzmach b'mutar lach. Obviously, none of the Gedolim were pro any of the phones. None of them. They're not pro any cell phone. Not a filtered phone, not a flip phone, not any phone. And you know, a few of the rabbis I had in Brooklyn, they were 100% legitimate. They were legitimate, and I mean it. Like, there were rabbis who spoke against the internet and the phone, and they had no cell phone. They would have a house phone. They would have a yeshiva phone and a house phone. Yeah. And you know what's funny? This is the funniest thing about this, is that every time I would call them on their house phone or the Kollel phone, or I would reach out to those rabbis, they always answered. And I know people that have their cell phone in their pocket all day. I call them and I have to call them 3 times to get answered. It was just kind of interesting how they were always available to answer, and they were much more attentive and everything. And this technology has done a lot of bad. This is the form of avodah zarah that's around today. There's nothing short to talk about it, and it's done a tremendous amount of harm. And of course, with everything that's sheked, falsehood is only sheked because it has emet in it. If someone were to tell you a complete lie, you wouldn't believe him. But if he told you a lie that had in it 10% of truth, now your mind has a safek, and you start to think about it. That is what the Yetzer Hara is with this phone. That it gives us a lot of good, a lot of benefit in things, and we need it to communicate and to work and to advance. But at the same time, it's bringing in a tremendous amount. It's bringing in a tremendous amount of Yetzer Hara into our lives. And it's becoming an addiction, and people are constantly going on. This is the Avodah Zarah. They prayed that the Avodah Zarah goes away. And after this happened, no one was worshiping trees, no one was going to a stone and saying this was the God that created us, and it got diminished, and it kind of went away until today. Also, what the Anshe Knesset do? They set up the Torah She'Ba'al Peh. They started to form all the Mishnayot, and they're putting together all the Gemariyot. They started to put together all the text of getting things together. They also put together a lot of the takanot of the Hachamim, a lot of the things that we're doing today in Halakha. They all set them up. I told you they closed the Tanakh, they sealed it up, which meant no more books could come in, and certain books were put in certain places. What do I mean? Why do some books go into the Nevi'im? The Chumash, I know. The Torah, I get it. But why some books go Nevi'im? Why Nevi'im Nishonim, Nevi'im Aharonim? And then why do you have certain Ketubim? Like, for example, Daniel Ish Hamudot. Daniel lived in Bavel, in Paras, Madai. He was he was in the royal court. And Daniel his books got into the Ketubim. A few reasons. One, Daniel's books were in Aramit. It's the only book in the Tanakh written in Aramit, except for one other pasuk in Yeshaya. I think it's Yeshaya Yud Yud Aleph. That's the only other pasuk that you're going to find. You're going to find a pasuk in Aramit. And his book was entire Aramit. They put in Ketubim. Why else? Because the writings that are in the Ketubim were not written b'nivu'ah. They were written b'ruach hakodesh, on a high level of ruach hakodesh. So the way it works is that you have the Torah, Mipi HaGevurah, from Har Sinai, from God Himself, and Moshe Rabbeinu. You have the Nevi'im Rishonim, which was a higher level, Nevi'im Aharonim, and then you have the Ketubim. The Ketubim is a lower level of a prophecy. Okay, so it was written Beruach HaKodesh, and that's why it got set. They and the Anshe Knesset they formed and established and put into each place where each thing would go. Okay. With the passing away of Malachi, the Nevu'ah completely went away. Malachi, according to the Targum, is Ezra, and after Ezra died, no more Nevi'im, prophecy leaves Am Yisrael forever, until, I told you, like Harambam says, that we have majority in Israel, and then something will happen, I don't know what, but will cause that prophecy to come back, B'ezrat Hashem, in our time. We will continue tomorrow. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen. Interesting. No, this idol worship thing was unbelievable. They tried to take away the Satan. You know what happened? The chickens stopped producing eggs. And the Hachamim said, why did they stop? Because they said the chicken only had a desire to produce eggs because of that desire, that Yetzer Hara, that desire to be with a male to a female. Yeah. He said, but the moment you took the Yetzer Hara away, the chicken said, I don't need any eggs, leave me alone. I'm going to work. I'm going to do something else. So they had to bring back the Yetzer Hara, but they took out the Avodah Zarah. One day, Belin will learn, how did they do it? How do you do that?
Meaning, for thousands, hundreds of years, we have the Jewish people straying away from God because of this appeal that we don't understand. you have an appeal to worship something other than anything else other than God, and then all of a sudden they come in and
even more.
Yeah.
Because if you tell me you're going to worship something that God created, like a constellation, a sun, a moon, okay, that's one level. But there was a different level. They were worshiping things that they were creating with their own handiwork and artifact. That to me is like the low of the low.
Well, then you have the stuff like the stories that you read on Baal Peor, in the Parasha.
Yeah. So like Baal Peor, you know what? It's interesting. We'll learn it when we get into in Devarim. We're at the end now. We're actually towards it because it's one of the last parashiot. Baal Peor was a avodah zarah that they worshipped by defecating. They would go to the bathroom, number 2, in front of this avodah zarah. And when Bnei Israel, the Mefarshim said when they did it, like one of the reasons they did it was not that they were worshiping it. They were like laughing at it. Like they were like almost like, this is the stupidity that you guys call your avodah. Meaning it was like, it was so stupid to them. It was so silly and foolish. They're like, this is what you guys call avodah zarah? Like they didn't care. Like I have to go to the bathroom anyway. So but the Moshe Rabbeinu did not like that. He said that even though you belittled it and it was nothing to you, you don't do avodah zarah. Avodah zarah is not something you do, even if it's a joke. Even if it's not, that's not something we get involved in. And these type of things, by the way, they exist today. Any assumption that avodah zarah or these type of pagan or Satan type of worship does not exist is nonsense. It does exist. Unfortunately, I've bumped into many people in my research of Jewish history and different things of researching the Torah and the Gemara and different topics, that this stuff is still around today. It's still very much around, and it's very dangerous. And a person needs to pray, and he needs to learn Torah, and he has to do a lot of things, Devarim Shepei Kedusha, to protect himself. Devarim Shepei Kedusha, I told you, is not learning. That's protecting your eyes from what you look at, the music that you listen to, what you eat. These things have a direct effect. I was reading yesterday, we'll end with this, as to why you'll notice that there's 2 different people go to the same yeshiva, 2 kids, they both learn together, everything is working great, and you notice one of them, as he gets older, is not so religious, he's just not so interested, and the other one is super, super religious. And it was brought down from what I saw, that the reason for this is that if a person uses business to get money unethically, he can train a person to go to yeshiva and to learn Torah and wear tzitzit and do everything. But if you're feeding him money, buying food from money that was stolen or not earned earnestly or honestly, what ends up happening is that ends up catching up. Or as they say, the body keeps score, and the body keeps score of that type of thing, and then later on, the guy just doesn't have an interest. Not that he's has v'shalom morid, has v'shalom in God, but he just he just doesn't feel it. You know, people I don't feel it. You know, you meet people sometimes, and like, why do you come? I don't feel it. I don't feel it. You know, we took at everything as a holistic approach. We look at it from the full picture. We never look at something from one angle. The Hachamim look at a holistic approach. What are you eating? What are you doing? Where are you living? What are you praying? Everything on the whole approach. And that's how you have to look at it. The money a person makes and what he eats and how it's connected has a direct effect on him. All right, and we'll continue tomorrow. Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to continue the Gemara. We're not going to review the Mishnah tomorrow. We're going to continue the Gemara and Anshe Knesset HaGedul.